So friends, continuing with the series on world history and revolutions, next in the series will be American War of Independence. Date important being 4th of July. This is the date on which the Americans proclaimed their independence at that Philadelphia Congress, and then under the leadership of George Washington, the Americans started fighting the war against the British forces being led by Lord Cornwallis, and finally with the Treaty of Paris in 1783, the American independence being recognized by Britain. Right, so talking about the causes, we will be making 3 videos. First about the causes, second about the events, and third about the consequences. Now among the political causes, one most important thing is British policy of salutary neglect. Now what we mean by this policy of salutary neglect? See, in Britain the feeling was that America is more relevant from strategic and from prestigious point of view rather than being more important from economic point of view. In Latin America, that was the Spanish Empire, and in north of US, that is in Canada, there was French Empire. So the British monarch was always interested in retaining the American possessions, and therefore the economic policies before the 7 Years' War. Now the 7-year war is 1756 to 63, which ended with again Treaty of Paris, right? So this 7 Years' War, it is a watershed. The British policies towards America before this and after this 7-year war undergoes a sea change, and that lead to the outbreak of the American War of Independence, right? So the British policy before this 7 Years' War was policy of salutary neglect. They were not focusing much on America as a source of wealth, though there were many colonial legislations like the Navigation Acts and the others, but not much wealth was being drained out of America. And instead, within America, what was happening is that the local legislatures were getting more and more powers. Of all the 13 colonial possessions in America, there were local legislatures, there were local governors, though the governors were appointed by the British authorities, but then the role of the governor was that of a nominal head. So the people in American colonial possessions, they have been gaining political and administrative maturity, right? So the people are becoming mature now. Similarly, when we talk about the social causes, most of the people who migrated to this new world, as America is popularly called, they basically shifted to these new parts, new continent, because they were finding it very difficult to continue with the social way of life in Europe, where there was now no idea of secularism, and then the cosmopolitan culture was not possible in Europe. So they have shifted to Americas, finding it more suitable for their social outlook, right? So they became socially mature due to the cosmopolitan culture possible in the far off land of America. Now when we talk about the economic causes, as I just explained, before the 7 Years' War, the economic drain from America was not that serious, but yes, once the British defeated the French in the 7 Years' War and the French then had to leave Canada, that became the British possession. Now the British policy towards America underwent a sea change, and with this new taxes were started to be imposed on the Americans. For example, the Tea Act, particularly during the time of Prime Minister Northbrook, the Tea Act, the Sugar Act, the Currency Act, and the Quartering Act, right? These were the important acts that were passed, and because of these acts, now the Americans were feeling as if there is a conflict between British mercantilism, that is the balance of trade must always favor the British, whereas American capitalism, because the Americans are self-made people who had not sought any help from the mother country, right? So they were the economic causes. Now comes intellectual causes. See, intellectual causes can be rooted back to the times of, can be traced back to the time of Enlightenment, and all the ideas of Enlightenment that were prominent in Europe, starting from the writings of John Locke, who is popularly called the intellectual father of American Revolution, right? Even the opening line of American Constitution refers to the ideas of John Locke that all men are born equal, right? Then the ideas of French writers like Voltaire, Montaigne, and Rousseau, they all had a very, very important impact on the American minds. And then the writings of the Americans like Thomas Paine, who wrote Common Sense, and then Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, they all were the intellectuals who started inspiring Americans towards the cause of democracy. And when now the immediate cause comes, that is the Boston Tea Party. This Boston Tea Party, it happened in 1773 on 16th of December, when the new Tea Act was implemented, which meant that Americans have to pay extra cess on tea. The people in Massachusetts state at the Boston Harbor, they came dressed like Red Indians, showing that their affinities with the British Empire are no more intact, and they basically consider themselves to be born Americans who have nothing to do with Britain. Now, with their idea of being completely independent, they objected to the taxes imposed on them, threw the bags in the water. The Boston Tea Party happened. With this Boston Tea Party, Britain declared America belligerent. The local legislature of Massachusetts was abolished. Now there was a fear among other colonial possessions that perhaps the same may be the fate with them, because of which they called a conference at Philadelphia, which is popularly called Philadelphia Congress, where initially the 12 colonial possessions sent their leaders, and then again in the Second Continental Congress, even Georgia joined, making it all the 13 being present at Philadelphia. Now here they declared the war. Now the question is that American Revolution, as the American War of Independence is popularly called, was a natural event in the life of men who had come of age. So see, they were politically mature, they were socially mature, they were economically mature, they were intellectually mature. So from such a set of mature people, slavery cannot be tolerated. So they had to fight for their rights, they had to fight for their emancipation, and the result was American War of Independence. Thank you. See you again with course and consequences. Best of luck. Bye-bye.